Morning, everyone. It's June 27th, 2022. Welcome back to my channel, Colleen C. to Serendipity. I would like to bring to you today, this day in history. President Truman orders U.S. forces to Korea. On June 27th, 1950, President Harry S. Truman announced that he is ordering U.S. air and naval forces to South Korea to aid the democratic nation and repulsing an invasion by communist North Korea. The United States was undertaking a major military operation, he explained, to enforce a United Nations resolution calling for an end to the hostilities and to stem the spread of communists in Asia. In addition to ordering U.S. forces to Korea, Truman also deployed the U.S. 7th Fleet to Formosa, Taiwan, to guard against invasion by communist China and to order an acceleration of military aid to French forces fighting communist guerrillas in Vietnam. At the Yalta Conference towards the end of World War II, the United States, the USSR, and Great Britain agreed to divide Korea into two separate occupation zones. The country was split along the 38th parallel, with Soviet forces occupying northern zone and the Americans stationed in the south. In 1947, the United States and Great Britain called a free election throughout Korea, but the Soviets refused to comply. In May 1948, the South Korea Democratic People's Republic, a communist state, was proclaimed in North Korea. In August, the Democratic Republic of Korea was established in South Korea. In 1949, both the United States and the USSR had withdrawn the majority of their troops from the Korean Peninsula. At the dawn of June 25th, 1950, June 24th in the United States and Europe, 90,000 communist troops of the North Korean People's Army invaded South Korea across the 38th parallel, catching the Republic of Korea's force completely off guard and throwing them into a hasty southern retreat. On the afternoon of June 25th, the UN Security Council met in an emergency session and approved a U.S. resolution calling for an immediate cessation of hostilities and the withdrawal of North Korea forces to the 38th parallel. At the time, the USSR was boycotting the Security Council over the UN's refusal to admit the People's Republic of China, and so missed its chance to veto this and other critical UN resolutions. On June 27th, President Truman announced to the nation and to the world that America would intervene in the Korean conflict in order to prevent the conquest of an independent nation of communism. Truman was suggesting that the USSR was behind the North Korea invasion, and in fact the Soviets had given tacit approval to the invasion, which was carried out with Soviet-made tanks and weapons. Despite the fear that U.S. intervention in Korea might lead to open warfare between the United States and Russia after years of Cold War, Truman's decision was met with overwhelming approval from Congress and the U.S. public. Truman did not ask for a declaration of war, but Congress voted to extend the draft and authorized Truman to call up reservists. On June 28th, the Security Council met again and in the continued absence of the Soviet Union passed a U.S. resolution approving the use of force against North Korea. On June 30th, Truman agreed to send U.S. ground forces to Korea. On July 7th, the Security Council recommended that all UN forces sent to Korea be put under U.S. command. The next day, General Douglas MacArthur was named commander of all UN forces in Korea. In the opening months of the war, U.S.-led UN forces rapidly advancing against North Korea, but Chinese communist troops entered the fray in October, throwing the Allies into a hasty retreat. In April 1951, Truman relieved MacArthur of his command after he publicly threatened to bomb China in defiance of Truman's stated war policy. Truman feared that an escalation of fighting with China would draw the Soviet Union into the Korean War. By May 1951, the Communists were pushed back to the 38th parallel, and the battle line remained in that vicinity for the remainder of the war. On July 27, 1953, after 2 years of negotiation, an armistice was signed, ending the war and reestablishing the 1945 division of Korea that still exists today. Approximately 150,000 troops from South Korea, the United States, and participating UN nations were killed in the Korean War, and as many as 1 million South Korean civilians perished. An estimate 800,000 communist soldiers were killed and more than 200,000 North Korean civilians killed. An original figure of the American troops lost 54,246 killed became controversial when the Pentagon acknowledged in 2000 that all U.S. troops killed around the world during the period of the Korean War were incooperative incorporated into that number. Let me read that over. The original figure of the American troops lost 54,246 killed became controversial when the Pentagon acknowledged in 2000 that all U.S. troops killed around the world during the period of the Korean War were incorporated into that number. For example, an American soldier killed in a car accident anywhere in the world from June 1950 to July 1953 was considered a casualty of the Korean War. If these deaths are subtracted from the 54,000 total, leaving just the Americans who died from whatever cause in the Korean theater of operations, the total of U.S. deaths in Korea War numbered 36,516. I hope you've all enjoyed this day in history, and if you do, please give it a thumbs up, comment down below, And why don't you think about subscribing if you haven't subscribed? Share this video out. Excuse me. And remember to smile, because I love you, but more importantly, God loves you. Thanks. See you in my next video. Bye.